started. So
You want this first?
I don't care. I'm not the important part. So I'm Curtis Alexander. If you don't know me already, and I and Craig Arnold and John. Can't think of John's last name.
Lundy.
Yeah, Lundy. John Lundy. We are kind of co-chair on the laser SIG. So we got a special guest tonight to speak. Before we start that, I wanted to just kind of go over some things. Come on in, Kevin. And first of all, I want to kind of start off. If is anybody, this is the first time in here at the SIG? Okay. All right. I wanted to start off. Is there any questions about light burn or anything that you want to touch on real quick here?
You don't have enough time. With him.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can get together sometime.
Yeah, just gotta work on it.
Okay. All right. So everybody's used the laser somewhat. Or is there anybody here that wants to get trained tonight? Nope.
There's enough time.
Okay.
And there's not.
Well, Craig is willing to go ahead and train. He usually does it during the SIG, but this is a special presentation tonight. I think it's going to be really good with Nick, and so I'd hate for you to miss it if you could, maybe get trained another time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let's do that then. All right, so any other questions or any other comments about light burn or the laser or anything like that to start off with? How about let's go ahead and do some show and tell before Nick starts, okay? Everybody see we got several projects. Arno, you brought a lot. You want to tell us about it?
Well, we've pretty well gone through most of it already,
Yeah.
but I've been doing these little God Be With You handouts. I've been doing this for about 6 to 8 months now. I have handed out over 300 of them. Great results, but I want to sell some so I can pay for some of the materials and time. I just burned out my air assist, so I have to buy a new one of those. I've also been into a lot of puzzles nowadays. So I've got the one that we've been playing with, but the one I'm most proud of is God woke me up one night and said, make me a picture that has me leading a battle group. So I went online with some artificial intelligence help, and I said, God leading a battle group. Well, I picked out the one that had 2 battleships in front of a fleet, having God walking on water, and it says, Yeshua, Lion of Judah, walk with him, trust in him down here. This is a 4-hour burn on the machine.
What was your rate?
The burn on this one was 400 millimeters per minute.
That's your own laser, not the one
This is
here?
my own-
Yeah.
This is my own 20, it's a 20 watt laser.
20 watt diode?
20 watt, yeah,
diode laser.
yeah. But,
And the wood's what?
that is just pressed wood. That's a prototype, basically. That's first try.
Good, good. Pretty cool.
Sure got nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of that one.
Anybody else got a show and tell project?
I just brought some junk,
Well, you want to talk about it?
nothing to brag about, it's my first slate project.
Yeah.
I did,
Bring it up here.
pass them around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Brought some, just some coasters I did for my sons and friends.
So have you been learning from Nick, or did you do this on your own?
Did on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you get the slate?
These I bought from, I got some from Michael's to start with, and they're like $1 a piece if you catch them on sale. And then I bought 75 of them from Temu.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, I didn't. I looked and I got them from Amazon.
Okay.
And they were, had 75 of them, and I think they were about $65, including the shipping. So they were pretty reasonable that way.
Yeah.
And this one was one that I did when I started playing with them, and we talked about sanding them down. I took this one, and these are some goof-offs that I did, and sanded it down to see what it would be like, because I had never done it. And I'm not sure if I really like it.
Sanded it before or after?
That was was after.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I really like it. It's so smooth that it almost doesn't look real.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
yeah, I kind of like the natural roughness of the slate, so.
Do you remember your burn rates and your speeds?
Uh,
40-watt diode or what?
this one was let me think here. It was a CO2 down at the library.
See it to the
Yeah, and it was 80, I think 80 and 20. Does that sound right? I don't know. I don't know the rates that well, to be honest with you. They helped me set it up when I did them, so.
20 millimeters per second?
I think it was,
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. They just helped me get it set up. The one thing I was gonna ask, on yours, do you coat yours after you do them, or are these natural?
The coasters I coat before, and we'll talk about that in a second. And
Okay.
You can also do a coat after too.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I've got to say about that.
Hey, thanks, lady.
Okay.
Great. Who's got the fish over here?
I brought that.
Huh?
I've got a
Okay.
80-watt CO2 at home.
That was 18 inches big? Is that how big that fish is?
Come up here.
You got an 80-watt CO2?
I have an 80-watt CO2 and a 5-watt UV
Oh, wow.
at home. So I get to play with a lot of stuff. But I make this cut it out of veneer. This, I did one piece and then burned it into the wood and glued it in and then sanded it all down.
Cool.
And then found out about the process of putting it on the metal tape,
Yeah.
like they fix ductwork with, and then that way you can do individual pieces.
Cool. Is that yours over there too?
Yeah, I brought a few other things that I
Yeah.
did.
You wanna pass them around?
Sure.
Do you remember your burn rates and stuff on that 80-watt?
I think that was around 300 or so.
300 speed.
Yeah,
300
300
speed.
speed,
And power, probably
probably 40%.
40%.
On that veneer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the veneer, I slowed it down quite a bit
I
more.
was gonna say, yeah.
And then these I made for a friend of mine that owns a pinball place down the street here.
Are you gonna put any kind of coating on it, or I have you
I put the little beeswax on there,
beeswax?
beeswax and mineral oil.
Beeswax mineral.
And then that one did with the UV. You get a really good detail with that UV. It's stone also.
All right.
Has anybody done any leather?
Mm-hmm.
I've never done leather. Is it, cut through real fast?
It depends on if you're trying to cut it or just engrave it
I
or.
wanted to learn how to do it. I guess both. Does it cut through pretty quick?
Not real quick,
No.
but it stinks.
Anybody else bring any show and tell? I mean, I think the stuff that you guys are doing is great. I mean, I've been messing with this laser since we got it.
Doc, you had something you didn't show you.
Yeah, I got it. But anyway, I'm impressed with what you're doing. Is far up past anything I've done. So hopefully I'll get a chance to spend a little more time with it now. But I did make a little box here, and I bought a toolkit as a XDAL set, and it came in a plastic container that didn't stay together. So I wanted to, put something in it that'd hold it together and keep it nice and everything. So I put together this box, and I will admit that I used the box maker thing.
Boxes, PY?
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, pass this around. The picture on the front here is an album cover that I thought was pretty neat, and I downloaded it and put it on there. So you can pull it out, pull the drawer out if you want, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, anybody else got any others? Nope. All right, well, let's move ahead then with Nick. And so Nick, you're going to give a presentation on slate work.
Yep.
And just kind of asking you, how long you been doing the laser?
About a year.
About a year, and it's just here at the shop?
Only here.
Yeah.
Only here. I don't have a laser at home, and I'm too afraid to ask my wife for that budget, so probably not going to get one at home, so.
And what you've learned here, you've done it all on your own? Learned it all on your own?
Other than the stuff that I learned from some of you guys and asking questions, I pick up little bits and pieces from people along the way, but as far as the slate, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, John Lundy came in when we first got approval to start doing slate in here, and he had a piece and he showed it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let me see if I can figure that out. So that was my inspiration to kind of get started doing slate.
How long you think it took you to kind of get it all figured out?
It probably took me, I don't know, 10, 15 coasters by the time I got some of the things figured out. So, there was a little bit of a learning curve. Yeah. So, but I feel like I got something now where it's a pretty repeatable process, and I like the quality of the stuff that's coming out. So I feel like it's something that could be replicated on a volume basis for all my friends and family, since I don't sell it.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Okay.
And so he has a handout. Everybody got a handout?
Yeah.
And there's some pens up here if anybody wants a
Everybody
pen.
needs a pen.
Anybody want a pen to maybe take notes or anything? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm happy to take questions as we go. I'm going to just start handing these to you. You can take a look and pass them around.
Since you don't sell them, just take one home with you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, only for my friends that I like, but
Anybody else need a pen?
and you too. So,
All right.
so you can be taking a look at some of these if you want, and of course, afterwards, if you want to come up and look at any of this stuff, you're welcome to, just to get a sense for some of the things I've been doing. So the very first caveat that I will tell you is a little bit what Curtis just asked me, is that everything I'm going to be talking about today only relates to my experience with RCO2 80-watt laser. So I know a number of you guys have your own lasers and things like that. So for those of you that do, you probably already know that each laser is not like any other laser. So you got to really kind of fine tune what you're going to do in your setup. So all the, what?
Who's that?
Somebody.
Chief Blair?
Yeah, just a random ceasefire. We'll talk about that here in a second, because that's the important part, I think, that I also discovered, which was helpful for me. But anyway, like I said, so keep in mind that everything I'm going to be telling you about is what I was able to do on RCO2 laser back here. So as you go into things on your own, I'm going to show you some techniques that I used to learn that you could probably use as well when you go to try to experiment on your own laser, because there are some things that I learned on how to cut, shortcut some things to kind of compress that learning cycle. So keep that in mind. Okay. So the very first thing I'll probably start off with is a lot of questions that come up, and there were some people that were asking about it at the very beginning, is where do you get your raw materials, right? And I'm an Amazon Prime member, so I go to Amazon a lot, and primarily because with this stuff, it's so heavy. I like that I don't have to pay for shipping, and in my case, I can actually get it delivered in the garage, so I don't even have to go pick it up at a locker or anything like that. So that's nice. Just put it inside the garage and it's ready to go. So for example, if you look at this one, this is a 48 count, 4x4 square, and in these volume, it's 60 cents a piece. Right? And that's about as low as I've seen them in bulk. You can buy bigger quantities like 68, 70, et cetera, 72, I think. But regardless, this is where I go, and I also go here for some of the larger pieces that you see here. So like the 8x12 charcuterie board there, that one runs about $8 a piece. And the larger one, I don't think I captured that one on here. Yeah, it is. So the larger one in here is $15, right? So that's kind of your raw material cost, right? So that's where I go. And then the next thing is, what do you do to prepare the slate? Before we got started, somebody was talking about I tried to figure out if I wanted to sand it or not sand it, et cetera, right? You can sand any of this stuff before you start. Of course, it's going to be a lot smoother. What I did is I ran some tests with smooth versus just the raw slate as it was delivered to see if I was going to get more fine detail on a sanded surface. And I didn't find that I got any more detail on a sanded surface as I did the raw surface. So for me, I like the aesthetic of having the raw slate, because that, to me, it says it's authentic. It's not a piece of plastic. It's not something that was mass produced, et cetera. I want that kind of a artisan feel to it. So I don't sand any of my things, right? But by the same token, what I will tell you, the one nice thing about sanding is when you're in your learning phase, it's great because you can sand it off and try it again, right? And use that same piece of slate over and over and over until you kind of get some of your things figured out. And that might be your throwaway slate, but you got the other 39 that you can work with and you're okay, right? So that sanding feature is kind of nice with slate because then you can kind of keep compressing your learning cycle. I don't think we have anybody that's going to train right now.
Okay.
So if you wanted to, go get a toddy and come back, you can do that. So, okay. I'm assuming that's why you popped your head in here. So anyway, yeah.
So you buy them and they have the tabs on the back,
The pads and everything are already on the back.
so that doesn't adjust how you put it on the laser?
Well, I mean, I'll put it down with the feet down, and then we'll talk about it here in a second. I use a sacrificial board, but then I will focus on top of that slate with the pads down, right? So that's accounted for, if you will. And because they have good, 4 corners on them already, so they're stable. It's not like they're wobbly when I put them down. So that's never been a problem for me as far as maintaining that focus, right? So yeah, that's the other plus about that is, they're already pre-cut. I love, what you've seen coming around, have those nice raw edges on them. Again, to me, that gives that artisan authenticity to it. It's not a finished, polished edge and those kinds of things. And I like some of the places where they're not completely flat all the way across and whatnot. In those cases, I use some of those and just adjust what image I'm going to put on them, and whatever's that off space, I just use as that black dead space, so it doesn't affect the quality of the image that I'm really trying to highlight in the piece, if you will, right? So once again, to me, that just adds more authenticity to the piece when you've got that variability in the underlying substrate, right? Now, the one thing I will tell you is on all a clear coat on the coaster before I engrave, right? Now, you can also come back and clear coat it afterwards. What I found is that you don't get that much of a difference in that contrast when you do it afterwards, the second coating, if you will, but you'll definitely get great contrast if you apply the clear coat before you engrave, right? So that's what I have found. Now, by the same token, what I also did is on any of the charcuterie things, I wanted them to be food safe, right? Because if you're going to put cheese and meat and leave those on there for hours on time at a party, I didn't want to take any chances with that Krylon stuff. So I'm using this granite cleaner, sealer, and polish for any of the charcuterie stuff. So that I found to work out pretty well. And when you see these charcuterie boards, you can tell you're not going to get as much contrast as you do when you pre-coat it with the clear coat, but still, I think there's still an enormous amount of good contrast, and certainly all the detail is still there. So when you come up and take a look at some of the bigger pieces, you'll notice that I think it's still a really good amount of contrast, even though I'm not using the clear coat, I'm just using that granite preparation, right? So and that's, there's the granite stuff you can buy at any of the big box, and I'm sure you can buy it at major retailers and online as well. But this is what I'm using, is this granite gold stuff. And I have quartzite at home, so I use it for my countertops anyway, so it's something that I can use for other things as well, right? So, so I'll pause there for a second, so I'm just kind of going a million miles an hour, so see if there's any early questions before I keep going on. Okay, so the next question is, where do you get your images, right? So probably everybody knows by now about Etsy, right? So Etsy has countless numbers of things that are available as far as engraving, and specifically they have a lot of slate engraving files that you can buy, right? The caveat that I will do is with anything, no matter whether you go to Etsy or some other Laserpix or this, that, or the other site that you can find, is you just got to be sure that when you bring that image over, what the quality of that image is, right? So before you go spend a lot of time and money on a big piece, test it and make sure that the quality of the image is there, that it's a file that's not been corrupted, right? When you go to burn it, all of a sudden you're getting skipping patterns, this, that, and the other, because some of those files are just corrupt. I don't know how it happens. I just don't know if there's good QC on their side before they put it up there or whatever, but that would be my one caveat, is no matter where you go, just always check the quality of the file, in a small piece or something before you go starting to do 20 of these all at one time and go, oh crap, there's 20 I just got to throw away, right? So just check the quality of the image. But again, just like everything else with Etsy, some of this stuff I wouldn't dream of investing any time for $5 or $6.50. I'd buy those. If I thought these were great, I'd just buy that file and making sure that the quality was there. There's no way in hell I could create art. I'll tell you that, I'm not an artist. But I can manipulate images once I get them, but I can't create them, right? With one exception, I'll tell you that in a minute.
You
Yeah.
buy them as image files, or do you get them as those?
You can get them in multiple files. Most of these guys will give you a choice of whether you want it as a PNG file, an SVG file, a DXF file. Some of them even sell Lightburn files as well. So each one varies a little bit, so you just look at that and make sure it's compatible with wherever you're going to take it to, right, in terms of what file type you need for your particular machine. But here, you can use PNG, you can use SVG, you can use DXF, and Lightburn. All four of those will run on our Lightburn software in this machine.
If you run trace, image trace on Lightburn, and you can convert to one of the files, I like SVG file, so I can convert like a PNG file.
I've had moderate success in doing the tracing. It's pretty touchy getting it to come out right.
Yeah.
It does work, but it can get touchy.
Yeah, again, anytime you're taking an image and trying to get it ready, there are a lot of variables, and we'll talk about here in a second, because that's a key part of what we've been able to do to figure some of this out. So the next thing is, what I've been doing in all the stuff that you see here and everything that's been passed around, I generated all those images using Bing AI Image Generator. All right, so this is where I go to generate all of my images. I get access to Bing because I have Microsoft 365 on my laptop, so I don't have to pay anything for this. And so the one thing about any kind of a AI generator, whether it's for text or images, is it's all dependent on how you write the prompt, right? And you got to get better and better over time to figure out how to recraft that prompt to get what you want to get, right? But I mean, just as a for example, what I usually do in here is I'll do this. And hit create. So it'll take about 8-10 seconds, and then this is what you'll get back. And the key that I've found for me, especially if I'm going to Slate, is that black and white line drawing, right? Because everything is going to be just two colors, right? I mean, you can produce a little color with Slate, but everything I've been doing is just two colors, right? And then I like it on a black background, because that way you can count on using that full space of the coaster for how you center up your image or offset it or whatever, because that way whatever you're not burning is going to be black, just like the coaster itself or the charcuterie board that you're going to be using, right? So this just gives you a sense of what you can do and how quickly you can produce some of these things. And then I'll show you the kind of the next step of what we do with this file when we take it to Lightburn, okay? So what I will tell you is I've tried Gemini, I've tried like 3 or 4 other image generators, and I didn't find the rendering as, for lack of a better word, sophisticated and as detailed as what I was able to get in Bing, right? Some of the Gemini stuff that I got out was like very simplistic line drawings, didn't have a whole lot of detail, didn't have a lot of this kind of texture in it, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the pieces that you saw coming around, hopefully you noticed that there's a lot of detail in how it's rendered, which I think just makes for a much richer image when you produce that, right, as opposed to just a simple, pencil drawing or something like that I think you wouldn't be happy with, right? So, so the other thing too is with any of this stuff, you can go ahead and you can modify this before you take it to Lightburn, if you will, right? So you can resize this, if you will. You can make it into a landscape design if you wanted to do that. It'll convert it. Now, usually what it does when it goes to a landscape, creates a completely different image, right? So that's the one odd thing about it that I found, like I can't figure out how to just resize that image. It completely creates a brand new image. So you got to see if you like that or don't like that, right? And then you can also customize this, and sometimes this is helpful, and I'll show you here in a minute why it is when you bring these images into Lightburn, sometimes the background, while you've even asked for black, isn't perfectly black. Right? So you might want to come in here and you can take out and remove the background, or what I usually do is I'll go in here and color correct this on the background, and I'll change it to a black background and re-import it into Lightburn so I get a clean, complete background. So I'll just apply a black background to it, and then I'll import this file into Lightburn, right? So hopefully what I've shown you is there are lots of options out there for where to get your images. I just like this because then I feel like at least I've got some of my own ideas being represented there, as opposed to trying to find something that somebody's already done that maybe looks like what I'm trying to produce, if you will, right? So like that one Chiefs player that you saw coming around, that was generated here. So it is not a picture that was converted. It was just a prompt that I said, hey, I want a Chiefs player with a logo in front, and that's one of the images that it produced, right? And I thought, oh, this looks great. You know, it looks like it could be any generic football player, and you know, it's the kind of guy that some women would ooh and ah over. So I'm like, yeah, I got to find a girl to give that to. So anyway, so that's the cool thing.
Me back in my playing days.
Uh-huh, there you go. When you were in your playing weight, before you blew out your knee? Okay. So anyway.
And so it gave you a Chiefs logo?
Yeah, yeah, and some of them won't. So that's the other good point that you raised. Some of them will give you a warning when you're trying to produce something that goes against their core rules, if you will. Obviously, you know, if you're doing anything, you know, pornographic or something, it won't produce an image. And definitely if you ask for like a particular person, like a celebrity face or something like that, it'll kick it out and say, nope, can't do that or whatever. So some of those things you will get pushback on if you're asking for something that violates their AI engine as far as what they will do for you. So you will have some of those issues. But I didn't run into any issues with Bing generating a Chiefs logo.
Copyrighted stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I don't sell them, so I'm not going to worry about it. But if you are somebody that's selling that stuff, that might be of concern to you, especially if you're selling them in the Kansas City market. But every time I go to any of these markets or whatever, there's like 1,000 of these things out there. I'm like, there's no way in hell you guys pay for royalties for the Chiefs or the. I know that. It's like so, and I'm guessing that the Royals has got or the Chiefs have got better battles to fight than some little guy selling a piece in the craft market or something, right? So, before I jump forward, any questions about image generation?
Can you take, Bing AI,
Mhm.
can you take a PDF file and convert it to a vector or
No. I mean, it doesn't do any image manipulation other than generating the images and doing a couple of those minimal things like.
You can't take a picture of your grandson and.
No. If you want to do that, then we'll talk about that here in a second. You want to go to like something like Image R,
Yeah,
right? Where you can upload
upload it.
your image into Image R and then process it and get it ready,
Yeah.
right? That you can do.
Yeah, I've had good luck with this thing called Rapid Resizer.
Yeah, that's another one, right? There's a bunch of software that's available free, or you can pay for it and buy it, et cetera, that allow you to take whatever image you want and then do a number of things to edit it, crop it, resize it, put different backgrounds in it, add text to it, et cetera. And then eventually the key part's going to be how do you do the raster image processing to get it ready for laser? And we'll talk about that next here in a second. Okay, but yeah, Bing AI does not do anything where you can upload a file and ask it to modify it. It strictly just generates fresh images for you. Okay, so so then the next question is, what do you do with this? And I'll just do it this way. We'll kind of do it live, and I'll show you. So now I just downloaded the image, and I'm going to go to Lightburn, and
That was quick.
I'm fast, I'm telling you.
I tell you, man, it's a quick download.
So this is the size of this image is pretty large. So we'll talk about these settings in a second, but I think the big thing to remember is what is the, so how many are familiar with ripping a file or raster image processing a file? Anybody? Okay, yes, okay, so some of you at printers or whatever know about this stuff, right? So the underlying thing here is how do you take a grayscale image and put it into dots, which is basically what the Lightburn or the laser does, is put down dots, as does a printer, right? When you're printing something, that's why you can print with just 3 colors and produce the entire spectrum of colors, because it's how those 3 dots are arranged along with black to give you that sense of it's a 4 or 5, 6 color job, right? So the laser has to do, the processing has to do the same thing as to convert this, right? So the key thing to remember in that is the most important variable is going to be what you set for the, this is another one, LaserPix is another site you can go to. There's a bunch of them. I just threw that up there. So the fundamentally key thing that you got to remember is how do you set the line interval, right? So this again has to be tailored to your particular laser.
In Lightburn right now, right?
Yeah, well, in Lightburn is where you set it, right? So when we talked about that here in a second, right? When we look at this one, you're looking at line interval right here, right? The very top, that's the line interval.
What's the line interval we use for this machine here?
Well, this is what I use for slate, right? And it's 0.08 because that is the size of the light dot on this particular CO2 machine, right? And why that matters is what this image will tell you, and this is why you have to tailor it, right? That line resolution determines how many passes that is making in any given inch, right? And you can go the entire spectrum from having it too high, meaning that you got too much separation, which means your image isn't complete, right? It's leaving empty spaces in between. And in this case, it would be black because it's the black slate. If it's wood, you're going to see the wood come through, or whatever your underlying material is will show through in that space. By the same token, you can go too much, right? By putting them too far close together, then you're basically overprinting line on line on line. It'll just go to mud, right? So what you want to do here is find that perfect spacing for your particular laser to make sure that you've got the line resolution correct, right? The other key thing that I learned by reading and looking at a bunch of YouTubes and whatnot is you got to also correct the dot width, right? So the size of the dot that that laser produces is unique to that laser. So this one back here, when I read with Rabbit, is this 80 watt one produces a 0.08 millimeter dot, right?
0.08 to set the line interval?
Exactly, and that's why that's key. You set that line interval to the size of the laser dot, and then what you also want to do is then correct the width of that dot, right? Once again, same thing, right? The one on the left is, of course, not correct. The other one on the far right is overcorrected because they're too far apart, right? So you're going in the other direction now, right? So the line interval goes vertical. This one goes this way, left to right, right? So the first one is not corrected at all, so that means those dots are just kind of coming right together, right? Once again, you're going to get a muddy image. And if you go too far apart, then you'll also get space in between. So what they'll tell you is in Lightburn, what you want to do is you want to set that to 1/2 the width of your line interval. So that's why you'll see the dot width correction there. Can you see that space? It's right here in the middle. I've got that turned on, and it's 0.04. It's half of your line width, right? Or half of that dot size that it's capable of.
What setting is this thing?
So let me, if you don't see it here, make sure I don't trip over anything. So right here is dot width correction. So the first one is 0.08 for the line interval, and then the dot width correction is 0.04, half the width, right? So there's a direct correlation between line interval and DPI. Whenever you change the line interval, or vice versa, it'll change the other one. Those two are correlated, right? So
you don't have to remember to change it, changes automatic, right?
right, line interval is connected to DPI. So if you change one, the other one will automatically change with it. It's on a scale, it slides together, right? So I always set the line interval. I don't worry about what the DPI is, but of course, since it's 0.08, it'll always be 318 on the DPI, right? But then the other key part is get your dot width correction to half of that, right? So again, double check with your laser, but what Rabbit says is, and Lightburn says, is you want the dot width correction to be half of the width of the dot of the laser. And so that's why on all of these files, what I've done is corrected that dot width to 0.04 and the line interval to 0.08. Okay? Yeah.
In Lightburn, in the test grid, there's isn't there a dot width and?
Yes, you can run that test pattern,
Test pattern,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I'll show you that here in a second, because that's another one of the things that I learned on how to figure some of this stuff out as well. And I'll show you what I did for a shortcut to get there here in a second, okay? So,
I'm trying to read what mode you're in.
as far as the image mode, that's Stucky.
Stucky?
Yeah. So I think I put that, didn't. So what I found is, when we were talking about that, is the three that I find works best on this particular machine in Lightburn is Dither, Jarvis, and Stucky on slate. Now specifically, everything I'm going to be telling you is only on slate, so don't go and apply this to mahogany or something like that and go, why the hell did this turn out to be dirt? So what I found is those are the three that are best. And sometimes it depends on what you've got in your image as to which one of those work well. But I'd say for me, 95% of the time, I'm running Stucky, right? So that's what seems to work. All of these images that you see passed around, they're sitting up here, are all using the Stucky dither pattern, okay? So now that's another, I'll just go into it very, very briefly, right? So once again, we talked about, it'll take that grayscale image and convert it into dots, right? So if you look down here at the bottom, what this tries to show you is that dither pattern and how it varies based on which one you pick, right? So each one of these is a unique algorithm that says, take this and I want you to arrange the dots in this way based on using the Stucky algorithm, right? So how that dot pattern gets created is what that image mode is, okay? So again, don't pretend to understand the algorithms that they actually use to tell it to how to create that dot pattern, but what you gotta know, one of those creates a different dot pattern, and sometimes that dot pattern works great, and sometimes it doesn't. For example, some are really clearly visible when you look at something that has, let's see, if I show you something in newsprint, you'll be able to tell really quick here that, when I show you this image as a, okay, so this is a classic example right now. I didn't correct this, and you'll see all of those white dots around this thing. It didn't come in as a completely perfect black background. So before I went any further on this one, I'd go back, I'd correct that, and change the background to black, and then bring it back in again.
But the only change you make was that's newsprint, right?
Yeah, but if you look in here, when I change this to newsprint, you'll see that it'll change how these dot patterns look, right? So let me go back here, and I'll show you what it'll look like when you change this to like a sketch, for example. That's probably the easiest one to tell the difference.
That's the one I use. Easiest.
So this is a sketch. That's black and white difference as to what the difference is in the algorithm for the dot pattern between what you had up there and what this dot pattern looks like, right? Clearly in this one you lose a lot of detail, right? But again, for some things, depending on what you're doing, it may be the right dot pattern, right? So don't, just take it for granted that it's right or wrong. And I'll show you what I did to kind of figure out what was the right pattern for me.
So when you were learning this, did you take an image and go through every one of those and look at it?
Yes.
Or-
So I'll show you what I'll do, and I'll show you how it got there, and then we can, so let me, okay. Yeah, let me save it just to be. Okay. So this is the final coaster that I wanted, was this particular flower, right? And as you can see, there's a lot of detail in this flower, right? So I said, okay, I want to make sure I get the detail to come out right, right? So what I did is, and if you want, I'll show it to you. I'm prepared to show it to you. How many are familiar with doing image masking? Yes? Okay, so I'll show you that here in a second. But image masking allows you to do what I've done over here, which is take a portion of this image and just work on that portion of the image, right? So I've cut that portion out, and you'll see all of these are exactly the same, but I took it out of this section right here, which I thought had the most detail, most contrast between the black and white, and I wanted some of these pistils to be clearly seen with some of this gray on here to be presented correctly, right? I didn't want to lose that detail, right? So what I did was I created this particular section, or an image mask, right? And I duplicated it and created this 9-grid pattern, right? And what you'll see over here on the right for cuts and layers, I put each one of these on a different layer, and each layer that you see that get highlighted based on what I clicked on is set with different settings. So each one of these is different. And then specifically, if you go in here and you look, you'll see, for example, all the details here. The speed is something here, the dot pattern is Jarvis, et cetera, right? So you can play with what you're trying to fine tune on. So if you're trying to get to what's the optimal speed, then in that 9-grid pattern, you might want to just change the speed and change nothing else. But if you want to figure out what's the right dot pattern, then you might want to change the dot pattern in those 9 in each one of those, right? So this is the shortcut for saying, okay, how do I take an image mask, right, and create this little test pattern? So all of these 9 that you see here, I did on a 4-inch slate, right? And the key thing here is when you take the mask, don't change the size, because you want it to be whatever is going to be the final produced size that you're going to do to make sure that you haven't lost any of that resolution and it's a true representation of what you're going to get, right? So while we're here, and I'm already talking about it, I'll show you how to do that real quick.
So just a minute. So you did one of those 9 with different looks,
Different settings,
settings.
right? It's
Not
ex-
the dither.
I did, right? And that's what, in this,
One of those is a different one.
correct.
All right, and then you determined which one you liked the best.
Produced it, actually went and did one slate that had all 9 of those different settings, and I said, which one looks the best to me?
And then you went back and you changed that to the big picture.
Exactly. That's the same setting I used for the large one when I finally went to production, if you will, right? So the way you do it is, for example, I'm going to take this little circle, and I'm just going to create a circle here, and I'm going to put this, just for simplicity's sake, on the tool layer so you can see what it looks like.
Where'd you get that circle again?
I just created it from over here,
Okay.
right? So just click on that and drag and hold it and make a circle. So now what you're going to do is I'm going to take this.
It's off the screen up there.
Yeah, you gotta talk.
Oh, it's right here. You can't see it?
Here, I see it,
What you're doing on the left.
Oh, tools are over here. I can't see it. Okay,
Visible.
sorry. So yeah, I just grabbed this tool this circle and just shift and hold for a perfect circle like that. So, okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this, you're going to highlight, I still got it in that mode, sorry. Go back to my point mode. So I'm going to pick that, I'm going to put it over the top of this image, and then I'm going to do a right click, or you can go up here and use the toolbar, but I always use a right click, and it says apply mask to image. Do you see that down here? Apply mask to image. So what that's going to do is it's going to put that circle over that image, right? Now, if I click again, I can take, the image is still here, you just can't see it. I can take this and I can reposition it wherever I want, right? So then what I did is I said, nope, I want this portion right here, and that's when you can do that. And then the next thing you want to do, just to have that and the rest of the image to go away, I'm going to right click again, and you're going to flatten the image mask. And then that's all you have left. The rest of the image is gone now, right? So that's what I did with each one of these, is I captured that and I just duplicated it 9 times, right? Just by using the grid matrix that you can do, once again, if you don't use this one, you use this a lot. I use this grid matrix to create a 9 grid pattern, right? To give me the whole 9 right away. I don't have to copy paste, it does it for me, right? I did that, and then I went to each one of these and said, okay, this is the setting that I want for this particular one. So this is Jarvis at 120, et cetera, right? So, and then if you don't know this, anytime you're hovering over one of these, if you right click, it'll flash which one you're looking at. In case you get confused which one you're looking at, you can just right click it, it'll flash the one you're actually configuring, okay? So that's how you can do a quick test is, again, for me, pick the most critical part of the image that you're trying to make sure is going to render really right. Take an image of that, and again, you'll see I didn't resize this image at all. I want it to be my final size. And then I duplicated that and created a 9 grid pattern, and then you can, again, play with whatever variable is the most critical. And you might have to take 2 attempts at this, right? One might be I'm going to figure out my dither pattern. Next thing you might do is you might come back and say, oh, now I got to figure out my speed, or speed and power, right? So again, it's iterative and you can do it. And like I said, in this particular case, I finally figured out I don't have to wait 9 pieces of slate and wait for 25 minutes for it to be completely burned. I can burn this whole thing in 20 minutes and get 9 different tests all in one time, right? So that's when I started to save some slate. So does that make sense? Because I don't want to go over this too fast, but I mean, that's a really, really helpful tool that I found that helps me to compress my learning cycle.
Do you do that with every image?
No, I don't, because I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I know I'm getting a consistent result with this, so I know. And now what I will do sometimes is if I get a different image that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure this Tucky's going to work, I'll just do it on screen and look at the 2 different patterns and see if that works, right? So, okay, yeah.
Can you go over, how do you create the mask again? Because I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen that on my.
Right, so it's a standard light bulb function, so I'll just back up all the way. All right, so you know how to create that circle, right? That's not anything, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to take that circle, and you're going to click on that, then you're going to click on whatever image that you want to do, right? Now they're both highlighted. You see how the big boxes are on all of it, right?
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
And in my case, you can go up here to tools, and I think there's here, like apply mask to images here,
Okay,
right? Or I always just do a right click because I'm an old PC guy, so I just use right clicks on my mouse. And here's the apply mask to image.
yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that on my menu.
Okay, well, it's a standard Lightburn function, so I'm guessing you're running the latest version of Lightburn, and I think it's been out there for a long time. So apply the mask to the image, right? And then you may not get that image in the right place because sometimes that tool layer is kind of hard to see, right? So once you've set that and you click again, and you can just click in the image area, and then you can move that image wherever you want in that. And then once you've got the right area that you want, then you can do a right click and flatten the image mask. And what the flatten image mark basically says is everything else that was in that image I don't care about anymore, throw it away, right? In this case, I didn't care about all that because all I wanted was that most critical part to run my test on, right? But again, the key thing is make sure that when you take this mask, don't resize it, right? Keep the same size that your final production size is going to be so you get the full integrity of that last image and not have it be like, wait a minute, that didn't turn out the same. Well, you reduced by 50%, what did you expect, right? So that was a really invaluable tool for me.
So Nick, when you do the image mask, it has to be on the tool layer, right? Not
Oh, you can use a regular circle.
You can?
Yeah, you can. I just find it easier to do with tools just so I don't mess up and go, oh crap, I didn't, you know. The nice thing about tools is it doesn't mess you up, right? You can, right? And of course, the classic, my favorite button on Lightburn is probably everybody else's, which is the undo button, right?
So you don't make another copy of that original and put it somewhere?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do. Yeah, I do, right? So that's why here.
When you delete it,
It's gone, right? So I don't know if I kept it here or not, but usually what I'll do is if I'm doing something like this, I'll keep the original copy over on one side,
yeah.
and then I'll take my mask out of it, and then I'll delete that, have an original copy over on the side that I can go, okay, I know the setting to apply to that, right? I just kept this one because, you know, it's like, okay, this could be helpful to, if somebody goes, how do you do this? I'm like, well, let me show you the test pattern I created, and then, like I said, each one of these, I played with different variables like speed and the dither pattern, et cetera, to figure out what I wanted, right? Now, the one key thing I will tell you is some of you guys are probably familiar with, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is image R, right? How many of you have used image R? Yes? Okay. So to the point that was being made earlier, image R is a tool where you can do a number of things to manipulate an image depending on what you're trying to do with it, right? So that's sometimes what people will use to take a photograph and convert it to a file that they want to burn like he did on that wooden piece that he did, right? So I don't know what he used to convert that photograph, if he just did it in Lightburn, right? But you can have a number of these software applications. This is called Image R, I-M-A-G, I think I put that on there, right? There what you would do is you'd upload your image, you can resize it, you can change the color, you can add the alpha rays and the gamma rays and all this other, you know, there's like 1,800 different functions, so it'll take a nice, you know, PhD to figure that out, right? But the key thing that, as to why I'm showing you this is, if you look up here, each one of these is an algorithm for creating a dot pattern, right? And so what you see here is like the Cassia black slate, right? If you go to some of these places, they will tell you what file you're about to buy and what image processing algorithm they used. Right? So look at that sometimes. You're buying somebody else's file and say, okay, what is the image processing algorithm they used? You may not like that one, right? So therefore, if you go to produce it, and if somebody had done this for black slate and you're trying to burn it on mahogany or something like that, you might be like, what the hell happened here, right? But by the same token, why this is important, no matter where you go, if you use some other image processing software to get your file ready to burn, whether it's on slate, or wood, or anything else, if you're going to bring it back into Lightburn, the key thing to remember in Lightburn see if I can show you this. Okay, it's really small, but right here, pass through. Do you see where it says pass through here? Right now, that's red, right? And the reason why it's red is I want this particular algorithm within Lightburn to be the pattern generated with my dots, right? But if I'd have brought this image in that I'm working on from image R, and I'd already applied a particular algorithm for that dot pattern, if you don't click this to say pass through and make that green, it'll reprocess it using this algorithm. So it'll take that image that's already been processed once, and then it says, oh, you want me to process it using Stucky? I'll take that image and apply my Stucky algorithm to it. So you've applied two different algorithms, which may or may not work together, and then you're like, what the hell happened? Right? Because what you can do in ImageR, for those of you that have done it, you can do a material and show me a preview. It'll show you what that image will look like on black slate or on mahogany or Baltic birch or whatever. Like, oh, that looks great. But then if you bring it over and you don't click on pass-through, then all it's done is take all that work that you did in ImageR or whatever other software you did to do your image processing, and it'll apply another algorithm to it. So if you bring in an image anywhere else that you don't want a different RIP applied to, a different image processing, then make sure you click on that pass-through button.
So you want it to be red or green?
Green, right? Green says pass it through, do not apply, because when you do that, I'll show you. As soon as you do that, none of these are available to you. So these get grayed out now. These get grayed out and you can't pick them.
You want to turn it green.
Turn it to green, which means it will not apply any algorithm within Lightburn to your image. It says take the image file that you're sending me, and whatever speed you're going to set, that's fine. I'll use that speed setting and the power setting, but I will not apply an algorithm for how you want the dots to be developed. Right? So wherever you get it from, if you like whatever you've done using another raster image processing algorithm, and you don't want to modify that, click this, which takes all these out of play. So you can't even pick these at that point in time. And that's the key. You'll know that you've turned it on to come through as it is when you can't select any of those. Yes, sir?
You took the lily,
Yeah.
you wanted to see which one of the light burns
Correct.
it was.
Correct.
So in that case, it would be red,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you would have dither or whichever.
Exactly. Right. That's why it was turned red, because I'm showing you that one that I played with all the dither patterns. So that's why it was red, because there is no other processing that's happened to that file anywhere else, right? It came in as a grayscale image from Bing, right? And I said, oh, take the Bing grayscale image and apply the Stucky dither pattern to it, right? So that's why it was red, because I wanted Lightburn to use its algorithm and not any other processing software to apply its algorithm for the dots. Right. So again, key part, if you're going to use any other fund, fine, it's great, you're comfortable with it, or you have free access to it, whatever the reasons, just make sure if you bring that file in already processed in Lightburn, click pass through. Otherwise, you just undo all that work that you just figured out how to use ImageR for 14 days, and now it's like, crap, it just makes crap for me, right? Why is this not working? So that could be one of the first things I'd check is if you've got somebody else doing it.
And green just means on, and red just means off, right?
Yes, well, the other thing, like I said, is as soon as you turn that green on, you can't even pick any of these. See, I can click on this all day long, and you can't pick your dot pattern.
But you can turn it back off.
Oh, yeah, yeah, just like anything else, right? And as soon as I turn this back off, now all these are available to you, right? So my drop-down menu is there again. Right. Questions about that before I move on? Right. But that's the nice thing about Lightburn is it gives you that flexibility. So if you have another software package that you love for how image processing is, because you can do all your color corrections, your cropping, your sizing, your backgrounds, all of that, and you love the way it uses that, Kanzia black slate in ImageR, and you love that particular algorithm, you can just pass it right through to Lightburn, and Lightburn will just produce that file the way you've already processed it. I think great feature, right? Because some of you probably have other software you love or you're used to or whatever, right? Okay.
So have you ever made like your mother-in-law's face on a coaster or something?
As a matter of fact,
Slate coaster?
no.
I did it on a dartboard once.
There's a reason why I'm a happily married man, buddy.
I
Unlike
was
you.
thinking it'd be a nice gift for your mother-in-law.
Oh, yeah? Well, the reason you don't have very many friends, Pat. Okay, so the next thing is I always use a sacrificial board when I work on my coasters, right? And a couple reasons why I do that. One, I will, whenever I'm doing these kinds of coasters, let me just, I'll just discard this. let me pull up one. Just yeah. So this is one that's being passed around. So if you'll notice on here, there is actually a tool layer on this one, right? And the reason why I use a sacrificial board is when you're trying to figure out alignment on the laser, this particular laser is notorious for the dot not being perfectly lined up with where it actually burns, right? And that's for any number of reasons. Somebody bumped it, it's gotten out of whack. I don't know what the reason is, it doesn't matter to me, but what I don't want to do is waste a lot of material, right? So what I will do is I will always keep the outer shape of my file, whether it's going to be the large coaster or the large charcuterie board or the small coaster or the square coaster or whatever. And then I will actually take this tool layer, turn it to a black single line, 30% power, whatever, and I'll burn that on my sacrificial board. So I know exactly where to set my coaster when I run my file, right? So I just burn it on my sacrificial board, set it on there, focus it, and now when I kick it off, as long as I remember where my origin was set in the lower right and not in the middle and all that other stuff for origin setting, which you guys have probably had some trials and tribulations around, but as long as you don't change your origin point, you remember to set the origin on the laser, you know that you're going to be wherever you want to be, dead center on the coaster, right, as far as where the image will actually produce. So I always use a sacrificial board. And the other thing I've learned is, especially with slate, since this is all organic material, not all of it is the same thickness, right? And I've run like 4 or 6 at a time, and what I found was if I set my focus on the thickest coaster, the other ones turn out well, right? That's been my experience. So if you have slight variations, and you can tell on some of those, you can just run your hand across and go, this one's thicker, that one's not, right? And I don't put a caliber to it. I just kind of go, okay, out of these 4, this one feels like it's the thickest, and I might be off like a millimeter or whatever, but it's like close enough. So I always set the focus before I started on the thickest coaster, 3 or 4 at a time, okay? So that's another thing that I learned, is that seems to make a big deal of difference. Now, the other thing I will mention here in a second is if you have a large piece like this one, right? There's a lot of image here and a lot of area to cover, right? So what you already know, regardless of what material you work on, the larger the area that you're producing, the longer it takes to do whatever you're doing, whether it's a burn or you're cutting it or whatever, unless it's a simple, cut me out a square that's 20 by 30, no big deal, right? But here, since you're burning an image, the size of that piece makes a big difference, right? So one of the things that I learned is what you want to do is you want to set one of 2 things you can do. There we go. Okay. Oh, wrong one. Ah, there we go. Okay. So this is the actual file that I produced that piece from. And you'll notice that there's actually 3 different images here, right? Okay, so now the other thing you guys are familiar with is when you do a preview on here, you can do this preview in one of 2 ways. Is you can look at it like this, or you can look at transverse movement, right? So what you'll notice is on the image on the left, it spends all this time going back and forth here because the laser only moves left or right, right, when it cuts, right? So to do this, the laser starts here, and it goes from here all the way over to here, comes back, goes all the way over to here, comes back, goes all the way over to here, right? So it spends all of this time coming back and forth, right? Versus here, it's only traveling here to here, right? And you can do it one of 2 ways. Either you can set each one on a different layer, which is what I did, right? And then set the sequence. So if you look here,
You mean each one of the cuts on a different layer?
right, so if you'll notice here, that lower left-hand corner on this one is set as 1 layer, the center is 1 layer, and the upper right is another layer. And I said cut it in that sequence, right? So then it only travels and does that particular image. The other thing you can do is you can also tell it to fill shapes individually, right? So if you have a large piece and you've got a lot of dead space between your elements, do one or the other, whichever is easiest, right? Tell it to fill the shapes individually. So it'll finish that lower left-hand corner, then move to the center, then move to the upper right. And in this case, you'll see here the difference. If I'll show you, this one is one image, and oops. Yeah. So the estimate on this one is 1 hour and 51 minutes to cut that big board. Now when I split it up, and I did this one, it takes it down to 1 hour and 25, right? Just because it's just all travel time. None of the settings are different, power and speed and everything's all the same. I just saved a half an hour on just travel time, right? So if you have a large image, either set them on different layers and tell it the sequence you want it in, or tell it to fill the shapes individually, and that'll save you a ton of time. Again, if you're working on a small coaster, it doesn't matter, right? You decide to do some of these stupidly large pieces, then use the fill shapes individually so you don't go, oh, 2 hours later, I'm barely through this damn thing, right? So, I think the other thing is, post engraving, you can, there's always a little bit of chalk dust, for lack of a better term, off with a simple brush. And then if you want, you can go back and coat it again with a clear coat, right? And again, I found that that second clear coat didn't give me that much more definition, so I don't usually clear coat my coasters the second time. And I definitely don't do anything with the charcuterie boards after I've cut them. I imagine I could go back and seal them with the granite sealer again, but I've never found the reason to do that.
You seal it with the granite sealer before?
Yes.
you cut it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I do. Right, I use the cleaner, get it completely clean, and then I seal it, and then I put the polish on it. And I just do that just to get a little bit more contrast. I haven't tried one yet where all I've done is just run it naked, if you will. But sometimes the grays, some pieces of slate are a little grayer than the other one, so I think you got to kind of make that judgment call. So that's what I had prepared. So, yes.
Back to the coasters.
Uh huh.
You do, since you use that board,
Uh-huh.
you only do one at a time? Or do you have a board that you cut circles in and place, say, 6 at a time?
Yeah,
4 at a time?
I can do either one. So some of these I've got laid out. Let me see. Let me go to the right place. Right, so this is a 6-up.
Okay.
So when I ran these, I ran them 6 at a time. Right, in that case, yeah, what I did is I changed this square pattern on the outside, that's the border of the slate, changed that to black, ran my grid, and then I set each of the slates in there, and then I'm ready to rock and roll, right? And then the other cheat code that I have is back there on that particular laser, there's 5 or 6 preset origin points that are there that are used for like First Friday. Pick one of those as my origin point, and that's where I always start from as well. So I just put my board in there, I use that frame, and I always know I can always go back to that point. And then of course the trick is make sure you hit the origin button on the laser itself. It's one thing to move the laser to that point, but if you don't hit the origin button on the laser, it goes back to whatever it was the last time on the laser. So, and then the other thing too is, anytime you're working some of this stuff, especially, if you're going at high speeds, don't put the image to the far right or the bottom of the work area. Set it more towards the middle, because you always get an amount of overscan. But if that image is all the way to the right or all the way to the bottom there, or all the way to the right, you just don't have any space for overscanning, right? So then you really get a very nasty edge on your piece. That's why you might see like a really dark burn on the right side, because there's just not enough overrun capability for the overscanning on your speed, especially if you're running 300. It's like, I got nowhere to go. I just got to bump up here and come back. So try to put your image more towards the middle of your workspace when you run it.
Have you got to the speeds yet?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have. The speed that I always run now is I only run it at 100, and I only use 20% power. I only use 20% power and 100 on slate. Yep. And again, this is for this machine back here. Hence the reason why I showed you that 9-grid pattern for how do you test it on whatever your laser is. Because yours might be, diode. I've never worked on a diode. I've never worked on a UV. I guess you could do it on a fiber. I don't know. But, I'm sure that's another beast all of itself by itself. But again, whatever your laser is, the power and all that other stuff, you have to calibrate specifically. For this particular 80 watt CO2 rabbit laser that we have, all of these that you see in here are produced at 100 millimeters per second and 20% power.
Do you guys use the material library?
Uh,
Do you guys use the material library?
no. No. Is that something we should?
Yeah. It's something that's really handy. So I think on your settings,
Uh-huh.
the little gear,
Oh, okay. Where am I?
or whichever one, or maybe it's your view,
Yeah, right here.
to show all the different
Yep.
windows. You can turn on the material library.
Okay. Units and grids display.
Maybe it's the Windows,
It should say Windows.
Windows key at the very top.
Windows way at the top.
Way at the top.
Yep, window
Oh, window. Okay.
Yeah.
and material library.
Mhm.
So down there on the bottom, once you put your coaster in, click on that.
Okay.
And you can create a new layer
Uh-huh.
and save that as your coaster layer. So next time you do coasters, you put your image in there and click use that.
Okay.
And it'll load those settings into that file.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you when you create one, save it as create a new layer and then label it as slate.
Yep.
Okay, and then it'll remember that. You just when you bring a new image in, you pick that from your material library and it applies all your settings to it.
Yeah.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
And then you can put everything in there from different types of wood to
Okay. Awesome.
coasters, whatever you like.
Awesome. That's a great shortcut. Thank you for that.
You done any photographs on the slate?
Not yet. No, I have not done a photograph yet on slate.
And have you tried any of these processes on wood to see how it relates to doing it on wood?
I don't know if I've done any of these images on wood yet. I haven't taken any of them to wood. So, but I would probably do the same thing that I did with that 9 pattern, is to see, okay, because with Baltic birch especially, I don't know how fine that grain is to be able to pull off some of this, that DPI, if you will, right? So I'd have to play with it to see if I can get the same resolution, because I'm really thrilled with the resolution that I'm getting on these coasters, especially when you see some of the small ones and the kind of detail that you get on a 4-inch slate is just magnificent to me. I think it's like, wow, that's amazing.
Anybody else got any questions?
Other questions?
So in terms of abrasion and stuff like that, how resistant are these to scrapes and abrasions?
Well, I mean, clearly you can sand them smooth, right? So if you're pretty deliberate about it, you can definitely do it. And if you take like a nail file or something, you can scratch them, for sure. Yeah, I mean, slate is soft, right? I mean, it's definitely soft.
Bottom of the coffee cup, stuff sometimes if you're not.
Yeah, depending on, if you got ceramic that you can drag across there, I'm sure it would scuff, right? But again, if you wanted to, one thing you could do is start to put that clear coat on it again, and that might help to minimize a little bit because you get a little layer of protection on it. So, but yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've gotten pieces before that had a little scratch on them, and again, depending on how light the scratch is, sometimes I've found that just putting that clear coat on it covers up that small scratch. But if it's deep, then you're going to have to either sand it down and allocate it to somebody that you don't like and give them that piece.
All right. Well, Nick, thanks a bunch. That was
Absolutely.
great.
Glad I could share that with you guys.
Fantastic job.
Thank you.
All
What's
right.
that?
Pretty much all we got for tonight.